So a prenup is an agreement. It's basically a contract entered into by two people in contemplation of getting married. So basically it says, hey, we plan on getting married and here's what we want to do in case of a divorce. So they're wonderful documents because it can set forth what are we going to do with assets that we currently own, but what are we also going to do with assets that we might own in the future. It can also set forth alimony, and it can also set forth whether or not you might devise something to your spouse in a will. So typically I advise people not to put kids' stuff in a prenup because when you're getting married, you don't know what kind of parent that person's going to be. You don't know what children you're yet going to have. You don't know those children's needs. And obviously we can't determine what child support would be at the time you get married because child support would be looked at the time you got divorced. So prenups can help safeguard family inheritances because you can obviously put in there that anything you inherit during the marriage would be your separate property. Now, one thing I always advise clients is if you do inherit something, you need to keep it in an account in your separate name. You don't need to put your spouse's name on it. You don't need to put it into any kind of jointly owned property. So it might be an awkward conversation, but I think you take the mindset that this is not something I'm doing to someone. It's just something I'm doing that I'm being a responsible adult. Because at the end of the day, a lot of marriages do end in divorce, and it's something that you're setting forth that's good for both of you. Because what it can do is avoid a lot of litigation costs in the future and a lot of heartache that comes with divorce. So it's something that you need to just approach from any other standpoint. You're just a mature, responsible adult, and this is what most mature, responsible adults would do. So I don't think that prenuptial agreements set people up for failure. I think it's just a contract because once you're getting a divorce, the court or the law views that marriage as a business arrangement. The court doesn't have the emotions in it that you necessarily do. So it's just like if you were to enter into business with somebody, you would probably have an exit strategy of, hey, if this business breaks up, how's it going to be divided? It's really not different than, a lot of businesses are set up with things like operating agreements, and it sets forth what's going to happen if somebody wants to exit this partnership or this LLC or this corporation. So it's a very responsible thing to do. So in my opinion, both people are the best to get the prenup. And I say that because at the time of the marriage, you could have one spouse who is earning significantly more money, but that doesn't mean that that other spouse who's earning less at that time might not surpass the other spouse and then be the higher wage earner. So I think it's really best for both parties to get a prenuptial agreement. So it could be anybody, anybody getting married. A lot of times it could be people who have a college education, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. There's a lot of people out there who have great trades, great skills. They start their own businesses. They become very successful. So I think prenuptials are great for everybody. So I think it's a bad idea to not get a prenup because none of us know what the future will hold. And I always tell people when they're going through a divorce, if the person was that way when you married them, you wouldn't have married them. So we don't get to control who people become or how they act in the future. So it's really something that protects yourself. And so I think it's also a bad idea not to have a prenup because you just don't know what the future holds. And also, if you were to get divorced, it can save you a lot of money. It's something that in the front end, that's not as expensive as it could be to litigate a 4 or 5 year divorce. One of the things that the court looks at in considering whether to enforce a prenuptial agreement is if both parties had an attorney. So it's very important that you and your spouse both have an attorney and it's not the same attorney. So if you're considering getting married and whether or not you should have a prenuptial agreement, or if you know that you want a prenuptial agreement and you need help drafting that, please reach out to us at Mandy Hancock Law.